All right, what's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with a preview for Week 16 of the NFL season. Coming down the home stretch here, lots to talk about, so let's not waste any more time and let's get right into it. If you've never seen this video series before, these are all the tools that I've created. We're just going to go through, talk about some interesting players, maybe see if we can find some stats that pop off the chart, and they're all available on dfsondemand.com. This is the cheat sheet. So we're going to start with quarterbacks here, and probably no surprise that Russell Wilson is the number one projected quarterback on my charts. I think he is the most expensive quarterback on the slate, so it all adds up. Seattle, they're going to need help, but they're also going to need to win out. So a highly motivated team with their quarterback at the helm, who is scoring more points than any other quarterback over the last probably 4 weeks, 6 week, 8 week stretch. However you want to slice it up, Russell Wilson is probably the guy. I can show you that in a second, but he's probably the guy there. The one that kind of jumps off the chart a little bit is Kirk Cousins right here. Just with the way I have this conditional formatting, you can see when the salary is not the same as his peers. So only $5,400 for Kirk Cousins playing this Denver defense. And I think that's really what the driving factor is behind this price for Cousins. So let's talk about Kirk just a little bit here. Let's look at his player profile. And it would help if I spelled his name correctly. All right, so here's Kirk Cousins. A little bit feast or famine, so not sure you really want to play him in cash games, especially against this Denver defense, but has the upside that few quarterbacks have in this league, especially ones that are only $5,400. This game is at home. It's in Washington. It's at FedEx Field. So if we just look at quickly Kirk Cousins on the road, averaging 17.5 DraftKings points, but at home it's 21.5. Nearly 4 points better, or more than 4 points better, right? That is probably one of the larger differences in splits that you're going to find, probably across the league, especially at quarterback. That's a pretty big difference. So Kirk Cousins at home. Now, the concern I know is this Denver defense, but this is a pretty interesting situation, and I think we've talked about this before. Denver's got a good D. Like, don't get me wrong, Denver has a good D, but I cannot imagine probably a softer schedule in the league when it comes to opposing quarterbacks. Just look at some of the names that they've faced this year, and even in the last, 5 weeks, it's Jacoby Brissett, Bryce Petty, Jay Cutler, Derek Carr, Andy Dalton, Brian Hoyer. That was like one play, right? That's not very good. EJ Manuel's on this list, Tyrod Taylor, Eli Manning when he was struggling. Like, I feel like they've gotten the benefit of a really good opposing quarterback schedule that has kind of driven down this average fantasy points against a number. And it's not to take anything away from them, but if you check out other teams, like other teams don't get it this nice. So they've been a beneficiary of that. And then, you have Kirk Cousins on the road, or I'm sorry, at home, that he's flashed that upside and he's been pretty good. So again, would not dare trust him in cash games. But why not take a little bit of a flyer in GPPs? I think there's enough to back that thought process. Let's look at this little who's hot chart, and I'm just going to try to get you like the last handful of weeks here so we can see what's going on. So this is since week 9, average fantasy points. So Aaron Rodgers, okay, well, that's not going to matter this week. Big Ben, of course. Cam, we know. Case Keenum, we know. Russell Wilson, we know. And then you got Blake Bortles. Might be a surprise to some of us. Let's see if we can look a little deeper into Bortles. And I'll get out of the way here. Last 4 games, 28, 18, 28, and 23 DraftKings points, costing no more than $5,700 in any one of those games. That's a pretty good stretch from this guy who all of a sudden is like dealing, right? A couple of 300-yard games in there, throwing a lot of touchdowns. Gets this matchup. Let's see what this matchup is this week. Where is Jacksonville? Oh, here we go. That's right. San Francisco. So the San Francisco Giants. Wow, San Francisco Giants. I've got that Evan Longoria trade on the mind. I'm gearing up for baseball season already. The San Francisco 49ers. Let's start with season long. A bottom 12 team against quarterbacks. Gave up 18 points to both Marcus Mariota and TJ Yates in the last 2 weeks. Russell Wilson obviously scorched them. The beginning of the year was even worse. Basically got lit up by everybody. So San Francisco, their offense is playing a lot better, which actually might be good. I would love for this game to turn into a little bit of a shootout, right? Jimmy Garoppolo going up against Blake Bortles. The Niners have played well recently. Let's turn this game into a little bit of a shootout. But the defense, not very good, especially against opposing quarterbacks. And Blake Bortles on a pretty good run right now, so he's got my full attention. And then I thought I had another GPP play here. Oh, it was probably Cam. So Cam popped up here, the third most fantasy points per game since week 9 for quarterbacks. And then what did I have for Cam here? Let's see. Yeah, okay. Look at these outcomes, right? 31 points last week against Green Bay, 15, 20, 15, 35, 20, 13, 37 in week 4. That's what you want from a GPP guy, right? He can throw for 4 touchdowns. He's going to run the ball potentially 10 times. So Cam Newton against this Tampa Bay defense is something that you have to look at and consider. Again, I'm not really trusting him for cash games. If you wanted to go the cash game route, where's my consistent guys? Stand by here for 1 second. Oh, maybe Matt Stafford here. So, okay, here's Matt Stafford. Basically, since week 8, he has scored at least 20 DraftKings points 1, 2, 3, 4 times. He had 19 in another. So what's that? 5 of the last 7, he scored you at least 19 points. He gets the Cincinnati defense this week. Wouldn't mind plugging him in. They're going to throw the ball all over the yard. All right, running backs. Todd Gurley, probably no surprise. He's number 1 again, most expensive quarterback. Kind of pops up in my projections as well. Alvin Kamara. How good has Alvin Kamara been? Here we go. This game, week 4, was the game he left early, right? Got injured, left. Look at these other games. Since week 9, 32, 27, 25, 39, 29, and 20 DraftKings points. Yeah, pretty good. Doing it all, catching a lot of passes. Drew Brees, historically accurate right now, historically efficient, getting the ball into the hands of his playmakers and doing an excellent job of it. He's going to get Atlanta at home this week. And we've talked about this before. We probably talked about this 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. What was it? 2 weeks ago, where pass catching running backs against the Falcons have absolutely feasted. Let me see if I can find this real quick. Unfortunately, we probably talked about this last time, and we probably played Kamara, and he got injured early in that game and left. But that doesn't mean it was necessarily a bad decision, right? If you can find a way to predict injuries, give me a shout. Love to hear it. Look at some of these, the profile of the pass catching running backs, right? So Cohen, 24 fantasy points. Ty Montgomery, 29. Christian McCaffrey, 20. James White had 16. I bet you if we sort this, whoops, what is going on here? Freaking out. If we sort this by the most points allowed by the Atlanta Falcons against opposing running backs, they're all the same type of player. Ty Montgomery, Cohen, McCaffrey, James White, McKinnon, guys who catch the ball. It's not that big of a surprise. Now you get Kamara this week. and he's just been an absolute stud. So yeah, I'll be investing pretty heavily. Speaking of, well, I shouldn't say, well, okay, pass catching running backs. James White and the New England Patriots are offering an interesting situation. So James White was limited at practice. At least that was the last I saw. It's Thursday. He was limited at practice. He'll probably play, but might be limited again. Rex Burkhead is out. They've just activated Mike Gillislee, right? So what is that like? What's happening? I don't want to be in the business of trying to predict what Patriots running backs are going to do. That's generally a losing game. But there might be one guy left standing, and his name is Dion Lewis. So let's look at his game logs here recently. Okay, so this is what I like to see, especially from the Patriots, right, who are kind of crapshooty when it gets to running backs. Essentially, every week since week 6, outside of week 14, every week since week 6, he's had at least 10 rushes. So he's got the built-in usage. He's going to get a handful of targets a game, but he might be asked to do a lot more this week just because of how limited the Patriots' backfield is going to be. And then you're getting him in a matchup with Buffalo at home. Let's look at Buffalo against running backs. They are, here we go, second worst for the entire season. Let's just look, I guess we can look more recently. Yeah, I mean, even the last half of the year, third worst. I guess a little more recently, they've been better, like 12th worst. Last couple weeks, they've been third worst. Like, it's just no matter how you slice the season, everybody's getting after Buffalo on the ground. And I certainly expect more of that. I don't know what the line is. I can look it up, but I'm assuming that the Patriots are heavily favored in this game. And if they have to go for the ground and pound for the last 15 minutes, that's probably going to be pretty good for Dion Lewis. And it is a, 11.5-point favorite is New England. So there you go. That would indicate some pretty good game script for Dion. And then Alex Collins is one guy that we probably haven't talked about too recently. But here's Collins, and you can see he's been the workhorse on this Ravens team since week 5. I mean, there was a time we were questioning like who was getting the carries here and all that stuff. Again, here's your last man standing. Also interested to see that he caught 5 balls last week on 8 targets, both season highs. Kind of has a little bit of a nose for the end zone. He's got 4 rushing touchdowns in the last 4 games. So a very good. He was 5,000 last week, and he is 5,600 this week. And here's Dion Lewis at 6,000. Okay. Oh, just before I leave, I'll show you this chart again and see if anybody else. Here's Collins. Kenyon Drake is on here too, outperforming his peers. Jamal Lewis is going to be losing touches, so I don't think that's still sustainable. If we go even more recently and chop this up to like, yeah, right, this makes sense. All right, Drake pops off. Gurley's on the right side of it. This all makes sense. Okay. Oh, here's Alex Collins. Okay, so since week 12, Alex Collins is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6th highest scoring fantasy running back per game. All right, wideouts. So here's my projections. The guy that I believe I'm most interested in is Michael Thomas here at $7,600. You know these New Orleans, Atlanta games are always going to get massive point totals, and no exception here. 52.5 from Vegas, which as I scroll through, there is not another game more than 48. So it is by far the highest total on the slate. It feels, and I don't have any numbers to back this up. Anecdotally, it feels like the Saints and like these games have always fallen flat when we go for 52 points or something like that. But what has not fallen flat is the production of Michael Thomas. And you'll see this here. Has not scored less than, 10 DraftKings points since week 7, and only scored less than 15 essentially once in that time frame, right? Has the upside. The last 2 have been awesome. He's that big body in the red zone that Drew Brees seems to be looking at more and more often. 25 targets over the last 2 weeks. 34 over the last 3. Those are, over the course of a season, those are like Antonio Brown numbers, right? Those are that would lead the league in targets over the course of a season. That's a huge number. So really good to see that. He's found the end zone in 3 straight games. Again, that increased usage around the goal line or around the red zone. And then of course, this game with Atlanta, just with a massive total. We probably have to hit on one of them eventually. The situation, and I don't want to call it a situation, but I will. The situation in LA is kind of interesting, right? So Robert Woods is back. So Robert Woods was, quickly becoming Jared Goff's favorite target this season before he gets injured, right? So played weeks 10 and 11. Week 10, he scored 40 DraftKings points. Remember that one? Week 11, did he leave that game early? I can't remember if he left it early or was just like, I don't know. He popped up on the injury report later. I can't remember. I'll have to look. But still in that game, saw 11 targets. Then he comes back for the first time week 15 last week and immediately gets plugged in and sees 7 targets, catches 6 of them, and finds the end zone. So I don't think he's losing. I think he's now just installed back into that role that we saw earlier in the season, which is pretty interesting. And then you have Cooper Kupp, who I'm not nearly as optimistic on, but it's almost like this team can. I hate to say they can sustain 2 high level wide receivers because they haven't proven it yet, right? Like, neither of these guys have gone off. They haven't proven it, but I'm just still a little bit optimistic on him just because of kind of the industry down on him in general, right? So he was 6,200 last week. I thought he got a big... Yeah, okay, so now he's only 5,300. That's pretty interesting. When a guy gets that big of a drop, and for the most part, the industry is going to be off of him, that's where I'm kind of like, okay, maybe there's something here. If I had to have a Rams wide receiver in every single one of my lineups, I'd probably have 75% of Robert Woods and 25% of Cooper Kupp. But, it's not 80-20. It's not 90-10. I don't think it's that clear. I'm willing to take a flyer on Kupp, but if it's cash games or whatnot, Robert Woods is looking really good. He's just been plugged right back into that impressive role that we saw a couple weeks ago. And then the last guy at wide receiver, he is right here at 5,000. So Robbie Anderson, we've talked about him a handful of times this year, right? And actually, before I do that, let me just show you a couple of these, right? So here's since week 10. Goodwin, I believe he was practicing again this week. He's outpaced his peers. Devontae Adams, unfortunately, I don't think he's going to play in concussion protocol last I saw. Here's Robbie Anderson on the correct side of the line. And then we know Keenan Allen and Antonio Brown are just insane. But Robbie Anderson right here. So since week 10, he is the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th highest scoring fantasy receiver. I do not think Bryce Petty is a good quarterback at all. I just do not. But hard to argue with 12 targets for Robbie Anderson last week. It's a volume league, people. Like, it's about opportunity. You can't score fantasy points if you're on the bench. You can't score fantasy points if the quarterback won't throw you the ball. Bryce Petty might not be great at connecting, but if he chucks it up to a wide receiver 12 times, I'm interested, right? Any wide receiver, if you tell me he's going to get 12 targets in a game, I'm interested. And this is a guy who's proven himself week after week. He's rattled off that 5 touchdown stretch. And he's only 5,600. Is that what I said? Yeah, 5,600 against the Chargers. Like, or I'm sorry, 5,000 against the Chargers. Like, they're going to have to throw the ball a ton in this game. They are 7-point underdogs, and they're at home. So I'll be firing up Robbie Anderson. Again, getting the discount, just like we saw from Cooper Kupp. And then tight ends. I'll show you this chart real quick before I forget. So this is since week 10. Kyle Rudolph, I think, is very interesting. He was nursing an ankle. Not too worried about it. Let's see if he suits up. Gronk is certainly going to be my favorite this week. We can look at him. What I really like about Gronk here is for all, like every single article or story on ESPN is, oh my God, Tom Brady in the last 3 games hasn't done anything, right? He's not throwing touchdowns. He's throwing interceptions. Oh no, the world's falling down in New England. That 3-game stretch, I guess it's not the same 3-game stretch, but in Gronk's last 3, 28, 27, and 25 DraftKings points. That's pretty good. Every time he suits it up, he's going to see 8 to 15 targets and, haul in 9 or 10 of them. Like, it's just impressive what he's doing at a position that is just absolutely garbage right now. So Gronk is, what's his price tag this week? $7,400. Almost acts as if a wide receiver, essentially. But if you don't want to spend that much, Kyle Rudolph I thought was interesting. And then Delaney Walker is someone that just quietly goes about his business and scores you a bunch of fantasy points. So here is Delaney Walker. At least 12 DraftKings points in all but 1 week since week 7. That's pretty good considering he's gotten you about 2.5, 3 times value every week. He's shown up and gotten you 3.5 at times. Again, this is a position that's not very good. If you're not going to pay for Gronk, what are you going to do? Are you going to take the flyer on Ricky Seals-Jones again and hope he bounces back? Are you going to take a flyer on someone like Evan Ingram or Jack Doyle? Maybe Jimmy Graham at $4,700 would be interesting. Ever since I talked about Jimmy Graham, he has fallen off the face of the earth. He was dealing with some injuries, but we probably talked about him right after this game. So we probably talked about him like week 11 and has kind of fallen off ever since, right? But, they're going to need him. Like the Seahawks need to win this game. They're not going to have any qualms about getting in the end zone early and often, right? I mean, it's not like they're going to bench Russell Wilson at any point. So sure, why not fire these guys up? There was a week, he was $5,800 a couple weeks ago, and we were ranting and raving about Jimmy Graham, and the industry was all over him. Buy when there's blood in the streets. So I'm kind of there. That's about it. I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys think for this week and next week as far as implications of guys who might be sitting. Talk about that more next week. And then as we go into the playoffs, these are going to change drastically, right? We're only going to have a couple of games to talk about. So there should be a lot of new interesting conversations that we're going to have on short slates and slates with guys potentially sitting out. So there you go. Let me know what you think. Tweet me. It's at DFS On Demand or leave a comment below. Talk to you soon. See ya.